What is good directing? When someone says a film or a TV show is well directed, what do they mean by that? Because it's quite a vague idea, isn't it? It's easy to say if you like the costumes or the music or the cinematography. It's quite easy to say if you think the sound is bad. But directing, what are we actually looking for? Well, today I'm going to break down some examples from some of my favourite films and filmmakers to try and define what good directing actually is. Or at least what I think it is. But first, I just want to quickly mention that I will be directing my own short film soon. It's called The Second Time Around. About a week ago, we launched a Kickstarter, and in the first few days, completely smashed our original goal. So I just want to say to everybody who's contributed, thank you. Like, because of you, I actually get to make my film, and that means more than I can express in the English language. The original target was enough to get the thing made, but now that we've surpassed that, we're putting in a stretch goal of £30,000. If we can reach that or beyond, we can pay for the fancy camera toys that we want to use, things like a grip and a dolly. And then on top of that, there are festival fees, so you have to pay to get your film submitted to a festival, and that always costs more than you think it does. And a bonus thing that I'm thinking about is if we get enough, we might actually be able to record the musical score live, like with an actual orchestra. If you like the sound of this and you want to check it out, the Kickstarter is the first link in the description. Alright, enough for that self-promo, let's talk about directing. If you've been around on this channel for a little while, you've probably heard me go on and on about The Social Network, and for good reason. It is a masterpiece. You may have even heard me talk about this exact scene before, but whenever I think of good directing, this is the first thing I think of. Mark and Eduardo are arguing about whether or not they should monetize the newly found Facebook, or the Facebook. Eduardo goes over to the fridge and takes out 2 beers, one for each of them. Moments later, Mark goes over to the fridge and takes out 1 beer for himself. Fincher is using this small action to communicate something essential about their personalities. Mark is singularly focused on himself, while Eduardo is being considerate, thinking of both of them. What's genius is that the dialogue never references this. You might not even consciously notice it, but it sinks in. By showing something as mundane as grabbing a beer, Fincher is adding layers of meaning to each character. If you took that action away, not only does the scene lose impact, but kind of the whole film. Little Miss Sunshine is one of my all-time favourites. I don't think there's a single human being on the planet who wouldn't enjoy this film. It's directed by Jonathan Dayton and Valerie Faris, and they use the full scope of the widescreen frame to tell their story. They always block the actors to fill the frame in interesting ways, whether that's for drama or for comedy. My favourite example is in the hospital scene where the family is told that their grandpa has passed away. The scene is blocked very specifically with the doctor in the middle of the frame and the family split either side of him. Then, as the doctor exits frame, we hold on this shot as he leaves a literal gap in the family. This now visually reflects the emotional state of the characters. It's such an elegant way to show it. When you explain it, it feels like it might be a bit on the nose, but it's a moment that kind of just passes by. They don't hold on it too long, they don't emphasize it, they don't push in on it, they just let it be. I love that kind of efficiency in cinema. When a shot can condense multiple actions into one frame, or when a shot begins as one kind of frame and develops into another. That genuinely gets me quite jazzed. And yes, I do hear myself when I say that. Spielberg was obviously going to come up. He's arguably the greatest living filmmaker. Anytime I watch anything that Spielberg makes, I'm always just like, oh yeah, you're the best at this. Calling Spielberg a master isn't even, he's more of a magician. I don't know how he does what he does, but he is especially good at this kind of efficiency filmmaking. Some of my personal favourites are from the, I think, underrated film Catch Me If You Can. Just look at this. We see Tom Hanks walking up the stairs, struggling to pull out his gun. The gun leads us to the maid, and then Tom Hanks quickly moves across the frame to leave room to flash his badge. All in one shot. Directing. There's another one later where DiCaprio's character Frank is about to take the bar exam, and Spielberg decides to shoot it like this. We start on the clock, tilt down, and in the reflection see someone at a desk hand Frank papers. We pan to the right, get a quick glance of the Louisiana State Bar exam sign before we pan again for a close-up of DiCaprio. Like, in what world does anyone see that scene written in a script and go, yeah, I'm going to shoot all this in the reflection of a clock? But I especially love when these kind of shots are used in dialogue scenes. I think there is a over-reliance these days on using the typical shot, reverse shot setup. You know what I'm talking about? 2 characters sitting or standing in a room opposite each other and the shots just cut back and forth between them. Like, in what conversation in your real life, if you're talking to someone, do you just stand in the same place for the entire... People don't do that. At best, that kind of thing is functional, and at worst, it's completely lazy. A great example of combining character blocking with camera movement is from Cina Royale, the best Bond movie. It's just Bond and M having a conversation. 2 characters in a room, talking. And when Judi Dench walks into the space, it would have been quite easy just to keep her there and have this be the setup. Shot, reverse shot. It wouldn't have been bad, but it would have been less interesting. Martin Campbell, who directed this, the legend, does this. M moves over to the fireplace, has a small exchange, then we get this absolutely gorgeous swooping camera movement as she circles back to the exact same spot she started in. She didn't need to move, she ended up in the same space, but it's interesting to watch people do stuff. Also, it tells you about how she's feeling. She's frustrated, she doesn't even really want to look at Bond in this moment. Eventually, she sits down, putting herself on the same level as Bond. She's softening. Then, when Bond leaves, we rack focus to M. A shot that began as an over-the-shoulder of Bond becomes a close-up of M. I love efficiency. But what if it doesn't make sense for your characters to be walking around? In Logan Lucky, Channing Tatum and Adam Driver play brothers who are planning a heist. They go to visit Daniel Craig's character Joe Bang in prison to pitch him their heist plans. Now here, since they're in a prison visiting room, it would make absolutely no sense for anyone to be walking around. You obviously have to sit the characters opposite each other, but how do you make that interesting? Well, Steven Soderbergh only changes the shots every time something in the conversation progresses. The start of the scene is shot with these loose center-framed mid-shots. After Joe Bang requests something from the vending machine,
why don't you go over to the machine on the left, you punch J7, bring it back, go on now.
We cut to this insert shot of a packet of eggs. It's efficient because we didn't waste any time going over to the vending machine, but it also serves as a joke. What does he want from the vending machine? Eggs. And eggs are funny. And even this shot, which looks simple, has 3 separate focus points, drawing our attention to 3 different pieces of information. Then we hang in this wide shot of the scene as the 3 engage in small talk. We move a bit closer as they start to talk business. Shot, reverse shot. But when Channing Tatum's character says,
"Yeah, we got a plan to get you out,"
Soderbergh finally cuts to the close-up of Craig's reaction for the first time. And by cutting to the close-up here, it's like the film is creating an expectation that this will be the moment that Joe Bang decides to take the job. But then, he leans back, away from camera. He's intrigued, but not convinced. It's not until later when Daniel Craig leans back into his own close-up, and then we know Joe Bang is taking the job. The same scene in the hands of a different director, and this scene could have been dull, but by choosing the shots carefully and cutting at the right moments, it takes a simple scene of 3 people talking around a table and turns it into an actual story. So what have we learned today? Staging, blocking, character actions can all deepen an audience's understanding of who these people are, using the full scope of the frame that you're using, no matter what that aspect ratio is. Not only does it look more interesting, but you can also use it to deepen the story. Being efficient with the camera, capturing multiple things in one frame, starting out one way, finishing another, keeps things feeling dynamic. And by being precise with shot selection and editing, you can control the progression of the story and also take something that's simple and elevate it. These are all relatively simple setups with not very many characters, and yet all of them are exceptionally well directed. And obviously in these examples, there are so many things that I haven't mentioned that are also good directing. Is the tone consistent? Is it well paced? Do the acting, cinematography, sound, music, editing all feel cohesive? Are they part of the same world? But to cut a long story short, TLDR, in my opinion, good directing makes me feel safe when I'm watching something. I feel like I'm in good hands. And usually that's because they're making intentional choices that serve the story. And before I end this, whatever this was, I'm directing my own short film called The Second Time Around. The Kickstarter is the first link in the description. Thank you so much to everybody who's contributed so far. I'm overwhelmed with the amount of support it's got. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a very good, whatever day you're watching this on.